to Expert Subjects Weekly Podcast. This week, I'm here with Carrie Gavin. He's a graphic designer and illustrator. And what we're talking about is how, as a writer, you can plan or collaborate with a graphic designer your perfect book cover. And it's so important right now because self-publishing is such an incredible trend, and it's so cool, and so many people are doing it. And it's great to work with a talented designer and make sure that you present the best possible cover to your book that you can. So Carrie's here to explain the process a little bit and take the mystery away from what goes into working with a designer.
It is an exciting time. Self-publishing right now is a great opportunity for the writer and the designer to have a relationship that they never had before, really. When it was previously done, the manuscript was turned over to a publishing house, and the result seldom had a lot of interaction with the writer. And now the writer can actually become involved, can speak with the designer, and impart their thoughts and their ideas, sort of what they see as the picture of how they'd like their book cover to evolve. And it's a great opportunity for collaboration, and a lot of satisfaction can be drawn from that combination of talents put together to make that cover happen.
That's great. Now, before a writer even goes to a designer, what can he or she do in order to sort of familiarize him or herself with options, illustration versus photography? Where is it that they should, search and explore?
One of my favorite resources is Amazon. It's a place where you can see hundreds of book covers all in one place at one time. There are other resources, but Amazon's a great one. And I recommend going there and looking at as many book covers as you could possibly find to just see what looks good, what appeals to you. It doesn't even have to be a book that's about the topic that yours is about. It doesn't have to be fiction or nonfiction, memoir. It doesn't have to be any of that. It should be something that appeals to you. The treatment, the feeling of it appeals to you enough that it might have made you take it off a bookshelf. And that's really what you want to finally have happen with your own book cover. See the elements that make that work and try to understand them.
I mean, what part of what's so fascinating now is that a lot of people aren't even going to bookstores, with bookstores like Borders closing and less sort of mom and pop bookstores being out there. A lot of people are just sort of doing their browsing online. So you want your book to, pop a lot of times visually, on the computer screen.
Nice.
So that's a very different sort of, aspect than people are used to. What typically, let's say if a writer is going to an affordable publisher, online publisher, are there restrictions? Is it usually a fairly rote process, or is it not?
No, it probably varies from publishing house to publishing house. And the experience probably varies from designer to designer. But generally, the writer would have the opportunity to present a summary or an overview of their piece to a designer, maybe including not simply the facts of the story itself, but some of the relevant, the tone, the time period, any of the elements that they feel really color their own picture of what this piece is about. And that initial conversation with the designer should hopefully be enough to set the designer off into a good direction. As well as knowing about the book, though, it doesn't hurt to know a bit about the writer's own feelings, what they'd like to see. Do they see it? Is their vision a photographic vision? Is it an illustrative vision?
Right. Because designers don't have an opportunity to read every manuscript. Time doesn't afford that.
That's
so
right. That's
the
true.
writer sort of has to convey the overall sense and vision for the book.
That's right. And what you see when you look out there is that there's not a single answer. There's not one direction that necessarily is the right one to make any book work, let alone your own book. And what you said about the marketplace now having changed, and the fact that it's the online marketplace, the flood of imagery now is just far more intense than it ever was before. So to stand out in that particular field, now this is allowing that the visual is a very strong factor here. Obviously, if somebody's looking for a type of book, the visual will have an influence, but the type of book is more what they might seek out first. But you've got to go for the fact that everything else aside, what people see is that cover image in some form, in some format.
Now, I'd imagine too, the writers have to be somewhat realistic in that, you know, if they have an idea, for example, that they want a supermodel on the cover of their book, and you know, an expensive, you know, $1,000 bikini, that might not actually come to fruition. But I'm sure that there are restrictions based upon, for example, the stock photography or illustrations that may or may not be available.
Right, that's an operative word right there, stock photography and stock illustration, both, which basically means they're not drawn or photographed, custom photographed or drawn for your particular project. So the things that exist that a designer can hopefully put together creatively and make work for your project. Knowing that you probably won't have that supermodel in that $1,000 bikini unless you're willing to pay the rights for it. And nobody probably is going to want to do that who's self-publishing at this moment. So you want to try to convey your thoughts as clearly as possible, but allow for the fact that when you get down to very tight specifics, it may be more and more difficult to make that image happen. However, it may not be that important. And that's, again, one of the reasons that I highly recommend that anyone who's setting out to do it, to self-publish and then ultimately have a dialogue with a designer, look at a lot of stuff, because it's amazing to see how simple a concept can be.
Yeah. And in other words, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So, I mean,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Carrie. It was really helpful, and I think to all of our writers out there who are going to be self-publishing and maybe who already have and are going to be doing a second or third book, it's really great to be informed and to know how exactly to work with a designer and what you should do to sort of prepare yourself before you even begin, you know, a rapport with the graphic designer. And we wish all of you luck in your publishing endeavors. And this week on Expert Subjects, you can read the weekly article, which is on the same subject. And we hope you'll tune in with us next time. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jen.
Until next week.